Lawmakers in Albany held a public hearing today to consider updating white-collar crime laws. A bill called the Securing Customer Assets Against Malfeasance, the SCAM Act for short, is meant to deter misconduct by large corporations by imposing a new set of penalties. Joining me now to talk about the bill and much more, we've got State Senator Zellnor Myrie. His district includes all or parts of Crown Heights, East Flatbush, Park Slope, Prospect Heights, Prospect Lefferts Gardens, and Windsor Terrace. He also serves as chair of the Codes Committee. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Good to be back with you, Errol.
Why do white-collar criminal penalties need to be updated?
Well, the last time that we updated our scheme to defraud laws, many of the statutes that we used to go after this type of crime was 1986. And a lot of us have, I guess, fond memories of the 80s, but we don't have a full appreciation for the fact that there was no internet, there was no email, there was no cell phone, no smartphone, no Bitcoin, no blockchain, no Zelle, no Venmo. And our fraud statutes have not caught up to all of the technology that has advanced over the past 40 years. And the truth is New Yorkers are getting scammed on a daily basis by a lot of these new technologies, and we don't have the tools in our statutes to hold bad actors accountable. We have spent a lot of time and a lot of resources as a court system, a judicial system, a law enforcement apparatus, focusing on street crime, and that is important. People need to feel safe. But we have not paid the same attention to white-collar crime, and that's why I held a hearing today, why I introduced the SCAM Act, so that we can update these laws to put money back in the pockets of New Yorkers.
Give me an example of a white-collar crime where the penalty is just out of whack, meaning that there either is no penalty or it involves a technology that didn't exist at the time that the laws were originally drafted.
Well, let's consider cryptocurrency. We hear a lot about this in the news. We're hearing about crypto ATMs. And we have a lot of our folks in our communities who may get a WhatsApp message that says, I have a perfect opportunity for you to make some quick money through cryptocurrency. You follow through on that offer. You get your money stolen in cryptocurrency. There is nothing in our criminal laws right now that allow for you to get that money back, because our statutes don't consider cryptocurrency a traditional asset in the same way that we consider money. But even if you take it outside of that context, if you are doing stock fraud and you take advantage of one individual for a certain amount of money, you have a higher penalty than if you, for the same amount, took advantage of hundreds of victims. And that sort of disparity between where the statutes are and where our reality is the thing that I'm trying to close so we can have people be held accountable.
Okay. Are authorities unable to prosecute certain crimes because the laws are outdated? I just think of us surely having some kind of a common law fraud equivalent, meaning if you defraud people, there's got to be something in the law now that would enable you to get hauled into court.
Well, one would think so, Errol, and you have a particular appreciation for this as an astute lawyer, but part of the difficulty is because the laws are so old and archaic, the resources that it takes to bring such a suit, if you're using common law or the common perception of what fraud is, you would have a much harder time than if you had a statute that spoke specifically to the type of fraud that is pervasive today. And also, if you're a bad actor, you can say, listen, this law does not apply to me. This law didn't contemplate the type of activity that I'm doing, and what I'm doing is not illegal. It may feel bad, it may look bad, it may sound bad, but it is not illegal, and that is what I'm trying to fix with the SCAM Act.
Okay. You also introduced something called the Restoring Integrity and Preventing Outright Fraud in Financial Systems Act. That's RIPOFF for short. I like the way you're using the titles of these laws. Is that different from what you're working on now with the SCAM Act?
So as the very famous musician, the artist formerly known as, the SCAM Act is formally the RIPOFF Act. We updated the title, so it is in substance the same bill, just a different name.
Got it. I know your colleagues have a lot on the ball, just like you. How come none of them got to this up until now? Because I looked at this and, I mean, you're absolutely right. There are penalties that could almost be written off as the cost of doing business because they have not been updated. If nothing else, you'd think that the dollar amounts of the fines would be increased by now.
This is the part that has been startling to me. When I first started looking into this issue, I made my way to the legislative library up here in Albany just to confirm that I wasn't bugging and that this was in fact true, that these laws had not been updated in so long. And if you look at some of the old legislative records, the conversations, the letters that were submitted when this law was changed, you could transplant those letters to today and apply those same principles. I can't speak to, frankly, why this has not been accomplished over the last 40 years. I can only say that the Democrats have been in control of the upper house of the chamber for only 8 of those last 40 years, and I'm glad that we're finally getting around to it.
Okay, fair enough. We'll keep an eye on that. Let me switch topics and ask you about the city. The different proposals that have come out of City Hall so far involve either raising taxes on the ultra wealthy or perhaps even increasing property taxes. From your point of view, what are the options that the city should be pursuing?
Look, I think that this state legislature, and particularly in the state Senate, we have proposed progressive tax increases for many of the years that I have been up here, certainly before this new administration has taken hold. And I think that is going to be an ongoing conversation as we get closer to the budget passing. I have represent a district where the property taxes are assessed very differently within one single district. And I have more affluent places in my district that pay a lower property tax than less affluent places in my district. That disparity, where usually it is a black homeowner that is paying a higher property tax, is something that we should be discussing and that we should be tackling. And I think before any conversation around raising property taxes, we should be talking about how we fix what I believe to be an unjust system before we take the next step.
When we keep hearing from Governor Hochul that she's not in favor of increasing taxes on high-income New Yorkers, we often forget that it has to go through the legislature anyway. Is there any sentiment, as far as you know, in the Democratic majority in the Senate to actually go ahead and do that?
We have had, as I mentioned before, in years past, we have raised some of the taxes on some of New York's highest earners, and they are a population that already pays a significant amount of tax and contribute to the revenue that we need. But I think all things should be on the table, certainly in a time where we are in the midst of an affordability crisis. And I think that there are some proposals on the table that would allow for New York City to just have the power to impose some of these taxes, and that doesn't come off of the state public fisc. And I think that that is going to be a part of the conversations next week. The Assembly and the Senate will be releasing their budget positions, and I think a lot more will be clear on this tax conversation at the end of next week.
Okay, we will certainly be watching for that. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, Senator Zellnor Myrie.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.